Hi. So this is going to be a very personal story. Hopefully not too intensely personal, but I'm warning you now. This is, and you'll figure it out yourself pretty quickly. It's a personal story. And it's a story of my time as a part of the City of San Diego Civic Innovation Lab, and a story about what I learned about not only what happens within a city to help facilitate innovation in communities, but the relationship between or amongst the actual workers in the city to that kind of activity going on outside the doors of the city. I think it's an interesting story. Our work began on, it began in February, and it took us about a month to get things like chairs and computers. So we really started work in March. And it was a wonderful, wonderful team with diverse backgrounds, but all of us really had boots on the ground in terms of getting out there and really helping change communities, as well as levels of expertise that made us suitable to be working within the confines of the halls of the city. And our boss was a urban planning rock star. He's our direct boss. What could go wrong with a team like that? So, like I said, we started in February. In May, we got a call to join in on a meeting with one of the important people in the city. It's a meeting in a big office. We assumed that the meeting was going to be about strategizing for our next fiscal budget, right? Our budget for the next fiscal year. And so we prepared a little bit for that as well. So we get into the office, into the big room, and what the important guy said to us, this was the strategy that he laid out. Your budget's been cut and your jobs are gone. Not what we were expecting, right? So what do you do after that? Well, I, of course, was brokenhearted, right? That's what that slide means. But I promised you a love story, and I promised you some hacks, and I'm going to deliver on that promise. Because what we did after finding out, however the winds had changed, that our time was going to be a lot shorter, our runway was a lot shorter than we had thought it was, really deepened my understanding about, one, why it's sometimes hard to get those kinds of community-centric innovation projects, to get space for them within the confines of the city, and gave me some ideas about what can be done to change that. So at the end, I'll share for you what I think is the perfect solution. Not the perfect solution, let's just call it, I call it the hack to end all hacks. And we'll see if you agree with me. So that's people versus the city. Obviously, there's a little bit of conflict in there, implied. And this is a space that was, it's about 15 years old. And throughout this time, the entire time that it's been in existence, it's been not active and not live, right? It was a space that was designed to be both of those things, very active and lively, and it just hasn't been. Although there are community groups who were really clamoring for it, and oddly enough, also groups within the city who were clamoring for it. The space was designed by the city's architect, right? And designed with, you can see down at the bottom there is a little area that he actually supposed could be a retail area. So what was stopping it from actually being activated? The groups were asking us now that we were in the lab, we thought it'd be a great project. So the thing that stopped it was this sort of complicated thing where this is something that spans a highway, right? This kind of a plaza is built across the highway. It's really a transit station. But the idea was that it could be more, that it could be a gathering place. So to do that, our state transportation department, Caltrans, would have to give away the right-of-way, the actual structure built and owned by the city, but because it's over a highway, you have to have this permission to use that right-of-way to do anything. And that was very complicated because to get permission to use the right-of-way, you have to, even if they're giving it away, you still have to give it a value. And determining that value was next to impossible because there aren't other things like this that you can go and look at and say, oh yeah, well this is how much this is bringing in. In this case, it was kind of like a unique example. So the only way to do it was to do a kind of a research study that would have been very costly, estimates are from $100,000 to $200,000. That's what had stymied this development, or at least so we thought, right? And so our guys and partners who were working on this knew that $200,000 wasn't coming to do the study anytime soon, but they were still anxious to get this win, and it's kind of something that everybody wanted. So they engaged in social engineering, right? Social engineering is a hack where you build relationships with people or a person who can give you access to the information that you need. And what they did is they went around and they said, it's been 15 years, a lot of people work on this, somebody must have a nugget of information that would help us solve this problem. And so they kept going around, they would talk to people, and it's like, yeah, no, it's a great idea. We really want to activate that space, but we can't because of this, you need to know the cost and how much money is going to be brought in, and you just can't. And that happened again and again, and they ended up with a meeting with a woman who said, yeah, I agree with you. We really, really want this space to be activated, but there's that whole money thing, and you can't do it, unless you were to use that MOU that the city has with Caltrans. And they said, like, what? So it turns out that there was an MOU. It's been in place since maybe the structure was built, right? It's been in place for 15 years while all these people were working, saying, how can we possibly activate this space? There was always an agreement to activate the space, and that agreement was based on not making money, right? Because then you don't have to solve that problem of like, what is the value, because you're not making any money, which was perfect because most of the groups that wanted to do it were nonprofits anyway. Brute force attack. A brute force attack is a hack where, let's say you lost your 4-digit code to something, right? And you want to figure out what that 4-digit code is. You could use computing power to just generate all possible combinations of 4 digits until you find your code, right? That's a brute force attack. So the project that's pictured here is something I did called the Open City Project. And it was originally planned before we got the strategy news from the important guy in the city. It was originally planned to be kind of this multi-city thing. I was working with partners in a couple of different places and engaging a couple of national foundations. And when I realized that I only had like a month now to do that, that had to change. So I did it really quickly. And the way that I did it was every part that I had to do, I applied brute force to it, right? So in all the contracts that I had to make, all the approvals I had to get, everyone I had to talk to, I just went out like a pit bull and did that, which was expected. What happened that was unexpected is the people that I was working with in the city, right? So like the people who do labor relations, or the people who did the finance for our department, or the folks who manage contracts, they also joined me in this brute force attack, right? Which kind of stunned me, particularly because when we were doing this, it was at the end of the fiscal year, so some of these people were coming in on the weekends anyway, but they were inclined, even on the weekend, to take on my project. And given that we were put in our position, because there was an idea that maybe when it came to these innovation models, that somehow the city is sometimes erecting some barriers to pursuing that. So to see these guys jump on board really taught me something. And it taught me something particularly in relationship to this activity. So this is a blighted lot that a community group wanted to take over, and they've been wanting to take it over for about a year. All they needed was for someone to submit the request. Someone in the city had to submit a request. It wasn't like they had to draft the request, or it wasn't like they had to defend the request. They just had to submit a request. And it had gone by like more than a year, and it hadn't been done. So they invited us in, and we helped out, and it led to this reinvigoration of that space, right? So what they needed was a man in the middle, right? A man in the middle hack is one where you have communication coming from one sector and communication going to this sector, and you insert someone else or some other kind of agent who dynamically influences that communication, right? That's the man in the middle, and we were the man in the middle for this project. What I learned about this project, that was all expected, right? That we could do that, right? That you needed someone to do that. What I learned about this project that surprised me, though, was that after it was built, the relationship that people had to their community changed. So that's not surprising. What surprised me is that while it was being built, the people who lived by it, right, they weren't so engaged in the building, right? But afterwards, once this thing existed, not only were they engaged in that, but they also, for the first time, joined together and did this petition against some other development that was going on that they thought was bad for the community. And they hadn't done anything like this before. And so when I asked the community group why this was, they said, well, because the people didn't get engaged when we were building this thing because they looked at that blighted land and they thought, well, that's just the way it is, right? They didn't even think about the fact that there's something that could be done, that they could do to change that. Then, once they saw the change, it changed how they felt about everything, right? Slowly, but they just became more engaged in their community, more aware of the influence that they had on it, right? Which surprised me, because I've been involved in a lot of projects like that where I was working with the citizens groups who really, really wanted it. I hadn't thought about that other sector and what influence it has on them. So, that was something that I was very encouraged by. I was encouraged by all the work that came out of that. But there's something particularly encouraging about learning that, right? Because it made me realize that what that group was doing, right, why they needed the man in the middle and why I didn't, is because the stuff that I was preparing, I prepared precisely, right? Because I knew I didn't have much time, precisely the way that the city people wanted it. And they got it, and they knew, it's like, yes, I have this thing, it goes in this box, right? They knew where it went. This thing that this group was doing when they reinvigorated that lot, it's not placemaking. Well, it is placemaking, but placemaking isn't about making a place, right? Placemaking is about making connections. Connections between neighbors, connections among the neighbor or residents and the physical space. There's not a box for that when you go to the developmental services department, right? You can't take a ticket and explain that you want to do that, not because the people wouldn't want to help you, but because it just doesn't fit, right? There's too much in what you want to do that doesn't fit, all right? So here I'm leaving you now with the super hack, right? The one hack to rule them all. And that is, you don't have to look at all of our regulations and say, let's take away this because this doesn't make sense, this gets in the way, this is obstructionist, all of that. You really just make one good regulation. And that regulation is a regulation that makes everything possible, literally. It takes away all the other regulations, which sounds like, wow, that's why you got thrown out of the city, because you're thinking like that. But it actually makes sense, and there is a model, right? So the project that we just looked at, they were having a lot of difficulty besides needing besides needing the permit signed, right, just to get sent over. They were having problems that extended to what they could do in the space. And one of the things that the Civic Innovation Lab learned is that, well, if you do a temporary space, then a lot of those problems go away. And temporary, in the city definition, doesn't have to do so much with time as it has to do with how you build something, right? So essentially, like, if something is temporary, it has a separate, different set of rules than something that's not temporary that you build, right? So automatically, they're already taking away some of the rules. San Francisco has something similar. They have these living innovation zones, right? And it's the same kind of thing, where it's kind of this special development where some of the rules have been removed or changed, amended. So what that does is it allows the things that people are doing to fit into more boxes. So if you did something where you took away all the rules and say, oh, that kind of project, that's a project that just doesn't have any rules, doesn't mean that it won't end up with rules. It means that you figure out what really applies to what these people are doing. And when you have that, and that's a function within DSD, then these people who want to come and do placemaking, they can take a number because now it fits into a box. And that is what I say is the one hack to rule them all. Thank you.